Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Strategic Internet Public Relations. It's Tuesday. It is a balmy 41 degrees in Central Florida, Orlando, Winter Park. I would tell you it's sunny out, but it is too early for the sun. And today is actually much warmer. We're about 8 degrees warmer than it was yesterday and the day before, so that's why I'm saying it's balmy. I'm not used to this kind of weather. I've been living in Florida since 1989, and my blood is very, very thin. And this coming weekend, we'll be traveling to Indianapolis, Indiana, where it has been a freezing single-digit month, end of January, and it looks like going into February, where they've been in the single digits for quite some time now. And you might say to yourself, well, why are you going? Which I'm saying, we're going because our youngest son, Cullen, we missed his graduation because of COVID from Asbury University. And he's been, for the last 6 months, he's been at the Indianapolis Police Academy, and he is graduating the end of this week. So we will be seeing him graduate, and that reminds me to tell you that next week I will be out of pocket, and your grading is going to be a little bit behind. There'll be a couple things that I can grade, and I may get to the all your discussions and get all them graded. So we'll see. I'm not going to have. I like to give some audio feedback, as you know. I may not be able to do that, and consequently, we'll just have to play it by ear to see whether I've got the ability to do some grading next week. So I just wanted to give you that heads up. I can certainly be reached by text, and I'll certainly return any phone calls, so if you have any questions. But I am taking vacation time next week. I will be available to answer any questions, and you will see some feedback from me, just not the amount that would normally be standard product. Okay, that was a lot of disclaimers and a lot to say before we actually got started. This is just an overview video. I wanted to welcome you back. I hope you're excited to be back in class, because this is a very different class than new media marketing, in the sense that we're actually going to deal with some topics that straddle both inside digital marketing and outside digital marketing. And to that end, what I want you to know, and I've got videos out there that show you the bubbles and all the different realms of digital marketing. Public relations, we have to cover a number of topics, because it's almost a complement to digital marketing, and we're doing it in one course. So as you probably know, you could come back to Full Sail and actually get another master's degree in public relations. But that public relations focus is not so much on marketing as it is on the grander topics that really include influencing a number of decisions. I always like to ask the question this month, and I guess this intro video is as good a place as any. What is the difference between public relations and propaganda? And I'm just looking. So, what's that? You're not sure? Okay. Well, here's a book written in 1928 by Edward Bernays, who's considered the father of modern marketing and also of modern public relations. However, up until the mid part of the 1900s, come here. There we go. There wasn't a term for public relations. In this book and his other very, very important book, Crystallizing Public Opinion, he refers to a public relations counselor. But the field of public relations didn't really come into being until the mid-century. And Bernays actually wrote the first textbook on public relations back in, well, let's just see. I always forget if it was 1952. So now, who's Edward Bernays? Well, other than the father of modern marketing and public relations, Edward Bernays, and why should we care? You're saying he's 1950s. Well, actually, he was born in 1892, and he died in 1995. There are video clips of him on David Letterman. Imagine being born in 1892 when there is no mass media other than newspapers and magazines, and now you're being heralded as a marketing genius and you're on television and reaching millions of individuals. That's the span of Edward Bernays' career. And interestingly enough, he was active right up until the time he died when he was 103 years old. What's curious is that I think his last appearance on David Letterman, he was in his 90s, and he lived another 10 years after that and was still productive through most of those 10 years. This is somebody that when you look at a TV commercial, when you look at a marketing campaign or a public relations campaign, trust when I say it probably was a concept that was pioneered by Edward Bernays, still being used today. So, to go back to the question, what's the difference between propaganda and public relations? It's all in the way that we want to use the term. So when a company applies influencing principles that will help crystallize opinion, how do you like that for a mouthful? We call that usually public relations, unless we're upset with the company, and then we call it propaganda. When the government engages in those activities, we call it propaganda. The word, and I've got a video that you're going to watch, actually comes from the 1600s, and one of the popes, where he created a ministry that was to propagate the faith, in the Latin term propagate. So from propagate, we end up with propaganda, and then in 1952 we officially introduce public relations. Sounds like a lot of history, doesn't it? To understand public relations, you really need to understand the history, because we go, well, let me tell you a little story, which is that one of the first people that on record that we know of using public relations in an effective manner was Julius Caesar. Whoa, what? How long ago did Julius Caesar live? Was he actually a real person? Yes, he was. And Caesar, Rome, I don't know how much you understand about Rome, was a republic before it became a dictatorship. And the republic was governed by, there was a legislative body, which was the Senate, the Roman Senate, and then there was the triumvirate, which was two people. And that form of government was always in competition with Rome's military leaders, among them Julius Caesar. And they were always concerned that the military leaders would gain too much power and as a result become a dictatorship. And so there were always plots, if you became a general in Rome and you became too successful, well, the politics of the day would probably end up getting you, and you wouldn't be a general for too long. There's a couple exceptions. Marcus Aurelius became an emperor of Rome, and he was a general. He was a very successful general. Julius Caesar became emperor, and he was a general. Caesar, to keep the people of Rome on his side, he would send dispatches back that people could read about his exploits in the wars that he was fighting. And today, what would we call these dispatches? We would call these press releases. And through the press release, we're able to influence events. Well, Caesar did the same thing back in the day. And that's how he was able to maintain and build his popularity with the Roman citizen. So public relations really has a very long and storied career, and one could argue even longer and more storied than marketing. So you might be saying, well, what was the difference? That was kind of like marketing. Well, that's why there's so many similarities between public relations and marketing. And that's why in your master's program, you're actually having a public relations course. So I'm excited because, again, we do a number of things a little bit different. No assignment, but 3 hefty discussion posts. And I want to come back before we go further. That's week 1. We change it up as we go each week. That's so in when we talk about discussion posts, when we talk about your assignments, as you know from new media marketing, I expect a lot of research on your part and a lot of references. In this class, we don't have a single textbook. I give you a lot of resources, and my O'Reilly list, which I give you access to, has a number of different books from the O'Reilly library that you can use as additional research. So you can research through Google Scholar, you can research through EBSCO, you can research through the Lexis database that's also through the Full Sail Library, and you could use any of the books from O'Reilly that I've given you, pointing you in the direction of. There's a lot of research out there. Here's what makes a master's degree so interesting. You know, if I give you a particular reading assignment, you should have, in this digital age, and I've had to learn to do this myself, I clear my desktop on my computer, and then I have just 3 windows open for a short period of time. The one window is my digital book. The next window is my web browser. And then the third window is either Word, or sometimes I use the Apple Notes application. So I'm making notes as I go through my readings. And then as I come across something and I say to myself, I really agree with that, or I really disagree with that, I'll usually go down the rabbit hole a little bit looking for additional research material. That's why the browser window is open. So you may want to have 2 browsers open, one for your access to the Full Sail library, and one that you just use for typical research. Now, the other thing that I do a lot of times, because Google Scholar and EBSCO can be a little bit finicky, so a lot of times I'll do a general Google search, see what comes up, so I can fine-tune my keywords, and then I'll use those refined keywords in the selective databases. Because as you probably have learned, when you're using a research database, they're not, the semantic logic is not as strong as it is in the Google product or some of the other search engines that are out there. So you have to be much more specific in terms of your keywords. And that way, I'm using one to go to the other. All right. So I've actually got a picture on my screen, which is triple loop learning. And I discuss this, and if you go through all my videos, you're going to find a very similar diagram in one of the Get to Know Me and what is how does a master's program differ from an undergrad program. So just to review, we're looking at this picture that's actually a screenshot from another Zoom for new media marketing, actually. And I've got, you see the four balls: context, assumptions, actions, and results. So in single loop learning, a lot of times we talk about single loop learning as being what you do in a bachelor's program. You learn how to do things correctly. So you learn a lot of process. Well, that will continue as you move into your master's program, but in the master's program, we add two additional bubbles. We add assumptions, which is, so we know how to do things right, but are we doing the right things in order to get the results that we want? And then, when we're operating at the highest level, we want to put that into context. And you hear me talk about strategic context all the time. How do we decide what is right in order to get the results that we're looking for? So those are the three types of learning, and as you're going through material, those should be some of the questions. Well, how do I know these are the right things? I know how to do them, but how do I know those are the right things? And you validate what you're reading through additional research. So you should have about 10 to 12 references for every assignment. Now, your discussions, if those were papers, I would tell you the same thing. You need 10 to 12 as paper. We're taking a look at discussions. So the first two, I would like to see at least one, but that's minimum. I'd much prefer to see what Full Sail says should be what you're looking at with everything, which is 3. Now, on the third discussion for week 1, which is the introduction to public relations crisis, I give you a ton of links. And you need to dig through those links because there's a ton of information in there. And you can certainly create a number of references from all that material. And I would look at it all because you're going to find it's very, very interesting. So what is the third? What are the 3 discussions in week 1? The first one is about ethics, values, and morals. And there's some great videos that I've got attached to that, so you should really take a look. And you'll begin to understand some of the things that you're seeing in your world today. For example, I talk about the Zimbardo experiment, which was the prison experiment, and then I also take a look at the Milgram experiment, which is basically how one human being can coerce another human being to do something that they don't think is right. See what I mean? Very relevant to our world today, even though those experiments happened mid-century, mid to late century, in the 1900s. So that's the first discussion. We get into values, morals, and ethics. Ethics are the framework that we use to think about things. And Socrates was probably the first real ethical philosopher. Socrates said that we should identify what the good is, because if we can identify the good, wouldn't we want to order our lives in such a way that we were doing good versus doing bad? That was Socrates. That was back in 400 BC. So there's a lot of good stuff in there, and that's ethics. What are morals? Morals, we use ethics to decide between good and bad, or right and wrong. And then values, once we identify the good, what do we value the most out of that, so that we focus on that above and beyond everything else. So that's the relationship between ethics, morals, and values. In a nutshell. What else do we have? So that's the first discussion. The second discussion is a 4-hour documentary that I'm only asking you to watch the first hour. But if you watch all 4 and answer all the discussion questions, And again, supporting with examples from the documentaries and additional research, you'll gain an additional 5 points that all apply to your lowest grade throughout the month. So that's one way of ensuring that you do very, very well. Why do I say that? Well, the reason I've put that out there, the first hour of the documentary really talks about the beginning of public relations, or the modern era of public relations, with Edward Bernays. And it then introduces Edward Bernays' uncle. Now, you're probably saying, well, why is it important to know who Edward Bernays' uncle is? Well, he was just a little-known psychiatrist from Vienna. Actually, not a little-known psychiatrist from Vienna. Everybody quotes his uncle, who happened to be Sigmund Freud. And Bernays spent a lot of his summers in Vienna learning at the foot of his uncle. And so between Bernays and Freud, what we're really learning is how to influence people, how to crystallize public opinion. Those four videos, the 4 hours, cover from 1928 to 2000. And what they really show you is the nexus between public relations, marketing, psychology, and politics. It's a fascinating view of the world, one that you'll, again, find very, very interesting, but might also scare you a little bit as you begin to look at the ways that we've been manipulated over the years. All right. So then we get into the third discussion, which takes a look at a modern crisis, and that modern crisis is Alec Baldwin's production of the movie called Rust, and Alec Baldwin actually shooting 2 people and killing 1. Now, in that, you got to ask yourself, well, who would you be protecting? Is there anybody that you could protect? Well, the production company is is responsible overall. They're responsible. You need to explain why they're responsible, but they're the ones that are responsible, and you want to try and mitigate as much as you can with the production company. But what you're going to find is how much difference is there between the production company and Alec Baldwin, who's the main producer. This is a really interesting one to dig into. And again, I give you a lot of links to research this. And the benchmark as to what not to do, and also things that you could do, comes from another movie where there was a death on the set, and where the production company found themselves in hot water. And that movie was called Midnight Rider. It was a Greg Allman biopic, and it had some pretty big people in it. But one of the production assistants was killed in an accident that never should have happened. So you take a look at that, and what can you relate from that to the current scene will help you understand how to handle a modern public relations crisis. I like this because it's constantly in the news, even as I'm speaking, and that's partially because Alec Baldwin figures so prominently in the story, and he can't be quiet. So from one standpoint, I think it's very, very interesting to watch from that perspective. Okay, we then move into week 2, and you're going to learn about newsworthy events. Newsworthy events are what we communicate to media, to our so that they can communicate to a much larger audience. And this is where, if you in new media marketing chose influencers would be versus brand ambassadors. In particular, influencers are a part of new media, right? And we want to be communicating to new media as well as legacy media, which is print and broadcast. So what do? We identify a newsworthy story, and we make sure that it is newsworthy, and then we put it in the form of a press release. Now, why do we want to always have newsworthy stories? Because public relations really focuses primarily at the top of the funnel with brand awareness and brand lift, but it affects the entire channel or the entire funnel, because if we're building trust and expertise through public relations, then it makes everything else that happens in the marketing channel that much easier. Week 3, you're going to learn how to do a distribution plan, which is very similar to a creative plan. We take a look at the newsworthy event and how are we going to use that newsworthy event over time. Obviously, we're going to have a press release, but what else are we going to do with it? And that's what we talk about in week 3 with distribution plans. And then week 4, we're back to you finding a crisis and you analyzing the crisis as a case study, and that becomes the week 4 project. All right, that's everything. I hope you have a absolutely wonderful month. Remember, I'll be out of pocket in terms of grading, but I'll still be available and may still get some grades done next month as we as the week progresses. Sorry, I said next month. Next week, as the week progresses, and wish me warmth as I travel to the great North Tundra. If any of you from Indiana, let me know how cold it is. All right, folks, this is Dr. John, and we're going to have a great month. I can't wait to talk to you all one-on-one again as we go through the month. Bye now.